The sudden and unexpected death of guitar god Jimi Hendrix at just 27 years old was one of the biggest rock and roll tragedies of the 1970s. Decades later, it is still somewhat of a mystery. Officially, the musician died on September 1970, caused by suffocating on his own vomit while intoxicated by barbiturates, although there have been questions about the accuracy of this from the very beginning. Some people thought Hendrix had died by suicide. Others believe the conspiracy theory that his manager deliberately drowned him with red wine because Hendrix was worth more dead than alive. The 3 years before Hendrix's death were a roller coaster ride of fame. He released 3 albums and became world famous with his band, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. But then it all seemed to go wrong, or at least become a lot more difficult and a lot less fun than it had been in the beginning. The final year of the legend's life was tumultuous, and everything seemed to be coming off the rails. Here's what the final year of Jimi Hendrix's life was really like. Hendrix was a bit lost musically. Jimi Hendrix released 3 iconic albums during his short life, but during his final year, he barely recorded anything at all. In truth, he seemed to be confused about where he wanted to go musically from there. It didn't help that at the time he had a revolving cast of backing band members, having never settled on a set of musicians after the Jimi Hendrix Experience broke up. The musician gave friends and reporters conflicting information on what he wanted to do next. Attempting to leave his manager, Michael Jeffrey, Hendrix tried working with a new producer, one who specialized in jazz. But their attempts went nowhere, and the producers ended the working relationship. About 9 months before he died, Hendrix was indicating that he wanted to concentrate on blues music, and that he would no longer be a lead singer. In the weeks before he died, Hendrix threw out even more ideas. The musician told his girlfriend Kristen Neffer that he wanted to take 2 years off completely, then only play the acoustic guitar. He told a reporter he looked forward to when he could stop performing and just write songs. Mike Nesmith of the Monkees ran into Hendrix at a party and learned he intended to go more R&B. Hendrix knew he needed a big change of direction and was trying hard to figure out which way to go. Of course, he would never get the chance. He was acquitted of drug possession in Canada. In May 1969, Jimi Hendrix landed in Canada to play a concert for 10,000 fans, but he was probably not expecting to be out on bail when he did. At the airport earlier that day, Hendrix was found to have a bottle in his bag containing 3 packets of heroin and a pipe with hash residue in it. He was arrested, facing 2 counts that could get him 7 years in jail each. Hendrix was allowed to leave the country before he returned to face trial in December 1969, 9 months before he died. Despite this being a relatively minor drug case, the trial stretched for 3 days. The musician's defense was that he had been given the bottle by a fan and must have just thrown it in his suitcase without knowing what was in it. This was not as outlandish a statement as it sounds to modern ears. Believe it or not, there was once a time when you weren't asked if anyone had given you a strange package before you got on a plane. Hendrix explained both while on the stand and to a Canadian newspaper during his trial that he had tried drugs before, but that he had grown out of that bad habit. Years later, a fan of Hendrix admitted that when he arrived in Canada for his drug trial, she and her friend supplied him with some marijuana. Hendrix was touring to the point of exhaustion. Jimi Hendrix played Woodstock on August 1969, exactly 13 months before he died. After that, Hendrix took a long break from performing live, only doing 5 shows over the next 9 months. But his manager pushed Hendrix to get back on the road because that was where the money was. Once he started touring again in April 1970, Hendrix went almost non-stop until his death, performing everywhere from Hawaii to Georgia to Sweden, doing both huge festivals and smaller solo gigs. He played some iconic and disastrous shows during this period, and those around him could tell the effort required was taking a toll. Over the July 4th holiday, Hendrix played a Woodstock-like outdoor festival in rural Georgia, where he was the highest-paid performer. He got the second highest fee for playing the Isle of Wight festival in August, but he probably didn't think that one was worth the money. There was radio interference during his set, interrupting several songs, and the audience only wanted to hear his biggest hit. But that gig was a dream compared to the nightmare that was the open-air Love and Peace Festival in West Germany in September. It was ruined by biker gangs robbing audience members, shooting a stagehand during the musician's set, and sending Hendrix fleeing to safety. Jimi Hendrix's final live performance before he died was a jam session at a London jazz club. Less than 48 hours later, he was dead. He was kidnapped. About a month after Woodstock and exactly a year before he died, a very strange thing happened. Jimi Hendrix was kidnapped, or at least maybe. Either way, something weird definitely happened to him that might have involved the mafia or his manager or some random guys, depending on who you believe. A lot of people are still interested in finding out the truth about the time Jimi Hendrix was kidnapped. And at the time, that would have likely included the musician himself. That's because a big part of the problem when attempting to get to the bottom of this alleged crime is that Hendrix was so high that he didn't seem to realize it happened. The kidnapping became known as the Lost Weekend. The tale goes that Hendrix was at a wild party and looking for drugs. Two men, allegedly not official members of the mafia, but apparently cut from the same cloth, offered to give him cocaine and took Hendrix to a second location. They then contacted the musician's people and demanded a ransom in the form of ownership of Hendrix's record contract. After some threats from an actual mobster, Hendrix was returned safely with no ransom paid. Some think Hendrix's manager Michael Jeffrey set the whole thing up to look like a hero. He was juggling many girlfriends. In the year before he died, Hendrix had several regular girlfriends who he spent time with. There was Monica Danman pictured, who was his companion for the last week or so of his life and who found him unresponsive. That same week, he reconnected with an old Flame model, Linda Keith, and gifted her an expensive guitar. In his final year, he also spent time with Kirsten Nefer, Devin Wilson, and Carmen Barrero. Some of the women were aware of the other ones, and Nefer overheard a phone call he had with Wilson where they argued about their relationship. Strangely, Hendrix appeared to have proposed to at least 3 of these women in the year before he died. He gave Barrero an engagement ring for Christmas in 1969, and asked both Nefer and Danman to marry him during his final week. Only Danman seemed to think Hendrix was serious about going through with the marriage. He also tried to get back with his ex Kathy Etchingham, said to be the only woman who didn't have ulterior motives about being with Hendrix. Even after she broke up with him in 1969, he would call her when he was at his lowest, and his people would ask her to come calm him down when he was stressed.